In Venezuela, representative of the Vatican Apostolic Nuncio, Monsignor Alberto Ortega Martin, handed over the credential letters to Constitutional President Nicolás Maduro. In Cuba and around the world, people pay homage to Commander-in-Chief Fidel Castro on his 98th birth anniversary. And Russia and Palestine assess the escalation of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict on the humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR Studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In Venezuela, the Vatican representative Apostolic Nuncio Monsignor Alberto Ortega Martin handed over the credential letters to the constitutional president Nicolás Maduro. In a historic act, both authorities shook hands as a symbol of peace and as a symbol of the recognition of the Holy See to the constitutional government of President Nicolás Maduro, and also as a proof of the historical relationship of mutual respect between the Vatican State and Venezuela. In Venezuela, the President of the National Assembly, Jorge Rodriguez, denounced the dissemination of false information by different agencies and media, which have caused violent scenarios in the country. During an ordinary session of the National Assembly, the Parliament held the second discussion of the bill for the legalization, regularization, functioning and financing of non-governmental organizations and related non-profit social organizations, in addition to reiterating the denunciation against the extremist sectors of the Venezuelan right wing. In this regard, the President of the National Assembly repudiated the position of different national and international media, as well as organizations that have tried to deceive the population through the dissemination of false information promoting scenarios of violence in the country. The President of the National Assembly of Venezuela, Jorge Rodriguez, announced that the Parliament proposed to pass laws that ensure the election results are respected.
Parliament proposed to approve a package of laws that accompany the actions of the National Executive and the ex-Prosecutor's Office to make the results of the election respected, and with the objective to defend the citizens in the country.
Jorge Rodriguez also emphasized that Venezuela's electoral laws must be reformed so that no foreign can take control of anything that has to do with elections in Venezuela.
I propose and I think that we do a reform, make a reform of the electoral laws of Venezuela so that never, ever any foreigner come here to do anything here with anything that deals with the Venezuela elections.
On Monday, Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro signed a decree to create a national cybersecurity council to deal with cyber attacks in the country. During the Defense and State Council that took place on the same day with members of the military high command and the executive cabinet, the head of state said that the measure seeks to guarantee the liberation and protection of all the country's technological command systems. He added that all the institutions, public and private, must be freed and vaccinated against cybernetic warfare. In the same session, Jorge Rodriguez, President of the National Assembly, said that the Parliament will discuss a package of reforms to regulate the use of social networks in the country as a measure that is also advancing in other nations of the world. The Venezuelan President, Nicolás Maduro, stated that his government is a defender of the United Nations Charter.
We are persevering defenders of the United Nations Charter, and we believe in a United Nations system, but a United Nations system that upholds international law, the right of the people, the right to peace, the right to independence, not interventionism.
Also, the Executive Vice President of Venezuela denounced that the acts of vandalism that took place in the country after the presidential elections were a consequence of the irresponsible calls of the opposition María Corina Machado and the former presidential candidate Edmundo González.
Hechos que se produjeron a raíz del llamado irresponsable y violento.
The events that took place as a result of the irresponsible and violent call of the violent activist María Corina Machado and that of the former candidate Edmundo González Urrutia, resulted in crimes against the Constitution of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela and the violation of fundamental rights of Venezuelans, such as the right to life, the right to personal integrity, the right to property, and the right to diversity, which constitutes, as stated by the Attorney General of the Republic, hate crimes, that were also committed on July 29, 30, 1 and 2 of August, in joint work with the Prosecutor's General Office. We have as a balance of the lethal victims, fatalities, 22 people whose cases have been duly substantiated.
Fatales, 22 personas que han sido debidamente sustanciados sus expedientes.
In addition, the Attorney General of Venezuela pointed out the seriousness of the hate crimes committed against the people of Venezuela by persecuting and attacking citizens for their political orientation in favor of Chavismo.
No solamente el delito o la instigación a un delito de odio, sino el crimen de odio, que es la...
Not only the crime or instigation to a hate crime, but the hate crime that is the materialization of the murder. Of course, when a person attacks another person motivated exclusively by their membership or a particular social group, are violent behaviors motivated by the prejudice towards the person by their sex, race, ethnicity, religion, gender identity, socioeconomic level, nationality, ideology or political affiliation, disability, sexual orientation. In the Venezuelan case, was strictly to persecute and seek to exterminate Chavismo. There is no doubt that is a hate crime in function of attacking and seeking to exterminate people because of their political orientation.
Crimen de odio en función de atacar y buscar exterminar.
On Monday, Foreign Minister of Venezuela Iván Gil rejected the statements of the White House spokesperson Karine Jean-Pierre, in which he granted that the alleged tally sheets published by the far right are true. The foreign minister assured that the coup operation planned and directed from the U.S. has no limits. Now, Karine Jean-Pierre, a spokesperson for the White House, proclaims herself electoral authority in Venezuela. The reality is that all her answers obey well-paid lobbies. All the questions and comments in the pantomime of the press briefing are paid off, framed in the great conspiracy against Venezuela. All Venezuelans wonder, who is paying for this? Which dark funds are financing this operation? Replied Mr. Jean-Pierre. Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates and more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. On Tuesday, August 13th, people around the world pay homage to Commander-in-Chief Fidel Castro Ruz on his 98th birth anniversary. In Cuba, citizens carry out different activities to honor Fidel Castro's work and legacy. Early in the morning, people from across the country gathered at the Santa Ifigenia Cemetery to lay a wreath of flower to the grave where Fidel's ashes rest. In the other parts of the world, citizens also pay tribute to Fidel's actions in the fight for a more equal and peaceful world. In China, Fidel's contributions to biotechnology were acknowledged. The Union of Cuban Residents in Argentina highlighted the example of the historic leader of the revolution and have been carrying out different activities since Sunday to honor the day. Celebrations alike were also held in other areas such as Russia, Nicaragua, Bolivia, Vietnam, and many others. The historic leader of the Cuban Revolution was an advocate of Latin American integration to confront imperialism. As faith to his view, we invite you to listen to a fragment of a speech by Fidel Castro during his visit to Caracas on January 23, 1959.
Estos pueblos de América saben que su fuerza interna está en la unión y que su fuerza continental está también en la unión. Hay que unirse cada vez más, hay que estrechar cada vez más los lazos de pueblo a pueblo, y a eso he venido a Venezuela, a traer un mensaje no de casta o de grupo, sino un mensaje de pueblo a pueblo.
In Uruguay, the fuel plant La Tablada is paralyzed by a protest of the Union of the Public Company ANCAP. The union decided to go on strike 3 times this week in the context of the conflict with ANCAP over the handover of the aviation fuel plant of the Carrasco Airport and the relocation of its workers. La Tablada is the main distributor of fuel for that company since it delivers almost 85% of the products that are produced in La Teja refinery. The measure implies that there will be no fuel deliveries during the whole day in the second of 3 days of stoppage decided by the company's union. A recent study revealed that more than 70% of the Argentinian population lives in poverty. According to survey data, during the 8 months of Javier Milei's government, Argentinians face some kind of poverty. The information warns that the majority of the population is poor, while the middle class has been reduced and barely exists. This in context of inflation, privatization and reform implemented by the liberal government, which has been denounced by the Argentinian workers because, in their opinion, it benefits the private sector at the expense of the people. The United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, warned about the situation of poverty in Argentina, pointing out that more than 1 million children go to sleep without eating. The organization's report states that more than 1 million children had to skip one meal a day due to lack of money, and that 90% of the households stopped buying milk, meat, and other dairy products. According to a study published by the organization, more than 7 million children live in monetary poverty due to price increases and economic recession, which makes it difficult for millions of households to generate income. In the Caribbean, tropical storm Ernesto advances through the lesser Antilles, causing heavy rains. Authorities on the islands remain under a tropical storm warning as Ernesto advances towards Puerto Rico, where it is expected to arrive during the night. Weather authorities warn that Ernesto presents maximum sustained winds of up to 72 km per hour and is moving at 30 km per hour. According to reports, the storm has left heavy rainfall as it moves through the region. Despite this, experts expect the storm to slow down before turning northward and moving across the western Atlantic. On Tuesday, a cutting-edge bioproject was disclosed in which beetles play the main role by eating up all bio-waste in Colombian highlands. Piles of organic garbage are edible for larvae of the enormous rhinoceros beetle, so it is turned into an effective pollution controller. In addition, the larvae poop is gathered and sold as fertilizers, and when the beetles reach adulthood, they are sold as pets to nations as Japan. Engineer German Viasus said that his facility in Tunja City gets weekly about 50 tons of waste generated by some 40,000 inhabitants of neighboring municipalities. That waste is stuck up as food for the voracious larvae, which can grow to the length of a human hand. Engineer Viasus shared his regards about the environmental project he runs.
We should aim to preserve beetles because they are responsible for breaking down all the organic waste produced by humanity today. A country like Colombia produces over 33,000 tons of waste every 24 hours, and by utilizing beetles, we could potentially have the fertilizer our farmers need at a low cost without harming human health. We only have received 15 tons per week from municipalities like Arcabuco, Saraca, Genesano, and Samaca, where the waste comes from households. We work with school children from grades 6 to 9, who ensure that people and their families provide us with waste that is strictly organic, without any other products.
We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at teleSUR English, there you'll be able to rewatch our interviews, top stories, special broadcasting and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, don't go away. President Vladimir Putin assured that Russia is keeping abreast of the events in the Gaza Strip due to the country's deep ties with the Middle Eastern region.
What is happening in the Middle East, what is happening in Palestine, of course, does not go unnoticed on our part. We have very long-standing, deep ties with the Arab world in general, with Palestine in particular, and we value this very much. And, of course, we are watching with great pain and anxiety the humanitarian catastrophe that has unfolded in Palestine.
During his visit to Russia, the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas demanded an end to the fighting in the Israeli-occupied Palestinian territories.
We are patient, steadfast in our land, and we demand a halt to the fighting, the provision of humanitarian aid to the Palestinians, and their non-displacement. We will not allow and will not accept, with us, the displacement of the Palestinian people from the West Bank, Gaza, and Jerusalem abroad, as happened in 1948. The tragedy of 1948 and the tragedy of 1967 will not be repeated, Allah willing.
The Palestinian president also reiterated his support to Russia in the face of the security crisis in the Russian border territories.
We are with you in what you are suffering from in these days of security crises and others here and there, supported by here and there. We stand with the Russian Federation without the slightest doubt.
So far in 2024, Russian security forces have foiled more than 110 terrorist attacks perpetrated by Ukrainian forces against civilians on the territory of the Russian Federation. The National Anti-Terrorist Committee confirmed that the terrorist attacks against Moscow involved citizens recruited by Kyiv forces. In this sense, authorities pointed out that more than 1,000 people were detained for involvement in the terrorist activity and 45 violent groups were dismantled. The committee stressed that Russia is devoting special attention to improving the effectiveness of anti-terrorist measures, given the ongoing attacks against the civilian population in the Russian regions bordering Ukraine. On Tuesday, an 18-year-old teenager armed with an axe and a knife stabbed 5 people in a cafeteria in Eskişehir, Turkish city. The adolescent, reportedly identified as Arda Ki, used a mask and a bulletproof jacket imitating the clothes of PUBG video game. Anadolu State Agency photos reported that the 5 injured were transferred to a hospital and 2 of them are in serious conditions. Meanwhile, the Turkish Minister of Justice Yilmaz Tunç revealed that the prosecutor's office of the city will open an investigation on the case. In addition, Hurriyet Daily referred that the defendant disseminated live the attack on social media, going the incident viral. A resident of the Mohammadpur went to court to file criminal charges against the former Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina, for the wave of violence of the riots. The Prime Minister resigned and left the country while violence and tensions rised on the streets. Therefore, a citizen resorted to justice to denounce the murder of the owner of a grocery store with whom he has a family relationship. The victim was killed by an armed attack. Besides Prime Minister Hasina, the Secretary General of the Awami League Party, the former Home Minister and Inspector General of the Police are further being accused. This is the first case opened before the Bangladesh judiciary against the former Prime Minister, who moved to India on August 5th this year. On Monday evening, 5-time Olympic champion Mijaín López highlighted athletes' commitment to the Cuban people and commemoration of Fidel Castro's birth anniversary.
And with our INDER president's permission, I told him I wasn't willing to read a communique, as I want to say from the bottom of my heart what I feel for my country, for my people who loves me. We are already at home. All the athletes who went with a unique mission that of fighting for our medals to reaffirm we are the best in the world. And we are happy to get here and represent our people, today, tomorrow and ever. I won my 5th medal. I am retiring, but I will work on our continuity, so that all our Cuban athletes continue fighting for victory and continue giving joy to our Cuban people. So I ask for a round of applause on behalf of the birth anniversary of our undefeated Commander-in-Chief Fidel Castro Ruz.
We have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net and join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok as well. For Telesur English, I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.